Jurassic World Rebirth will be arriving in theaters in less than a week. As you know, we've been looking at all of the previous Jurassic World and Jurassic Park films and taking a look at all of the different creature designs. Talking about them in comparison to the real life animal and just how they are as a design overall. And we are on the final film in the franchise, that being Jurassic World Dominion. We made it. I was kind of worried that we wouldn't make it, but we made it. I am recording this video right now, which is very good. Now, just like Fallen Kingdom, I won't be taking a look at every single creature that appears in this film because we've already looked at a lot of them before. So we'll only be focusing on the new creatures and the creatures with redesigns, which there's actually like the majority of them are basically that. So there's actually quite a few to look at in this one. So let's just get right into it. So I want to start off with the Cretaceous Tyrannosaurus Rex, the one that Rexy was eventually cloned from, or at least that's implied. I really like the way that this one looks. She actually has like a small amount of feathers on top of her, which is actually likely for Tyrannosaurus Rex. Now, T-Rex is a Coelurosaur dinosaur. Coelurosaurs very commonly do have feathers, and phylogenetically speaking, it's actually more likely for T-Rex to have feathers than it is for T-Rex to not have feathers. And the route that they took in this design is the most likely way that the feathers would be distributed on the animal's body, that being a very small amount of sparse hair-like feathers. It's kind of similar to how it was portrayed in Prehistoric Planet, because these are the type of feathers that are still present, but of course will not cause the animal to overheat, because of course T-Rex was a big dinosaur. It lived in a warm environment. So if it had too many feathers that were too insulating, that would cause the poor animal to overheat in a relatively quick time frame. So they did it in a very good way, and it looks really good. It's actually like really satisfying to see the Jurassic Park style T-Rex with like small amounts of feathers. And it's by far my favorite T-Rex to place in Jurassic World Evolution 2. I hope it shows up in Jurassic World Evolution 3. On top of that, the modern day Rexy actually technically has a new old model, as they modeled it off of the original Jurassic Park T-Rex. So that means she has a lot of her bulk back, and it looks amazing, especially with this shot right here. The Jurassic World version of T-Rex has never looked better than she does in Dominion. She has a lot of that bulk, and for some reason, to me, the colors just look even better than they had before. So all around, the T-Rex really does win in the design department in Dominion. After that is Nasutoceratops living in the wrong time and place, which is that's the common theme with the prologue. There's a lot of animals that did not exist in this time or place, and Nasutoceratops is one of the first. Why they put Nasutoceratops instead of Triceratops, I'll never know, but here we are. Anyway, I love the way that the Jurassic World Nasutoceratops looks. Technically, it made its debut in Battle at Big Rock, which is a short film that was released like a little bit before, like a couple of years before Dominion was released. But we are just talking about the movies with this series, so, both the Nasutoceratops and the Allosaurus will get covered in this video. The Nasutoceratops does look great. It has the proper Nasutoceratops head with that huge schnoz. Like Nasutoceratops did have this huge kind of rounded snout. These horns that start growing off to the side and then start to curve forward, very similar to bull horns, which is such a cool and unique thing about Nasutoceratops, and that relatively small rounded frill. The head just looks great. It looks fantastic. There's also a male variant that has more of like a jagged nose and kind of like a larger frill and more curved and longer horns. Sexual dimorphism is always really cool to see in these animals. Of course, it's not perfect. It still does have the elephant feet. It's also a bit larger than the real life Nasutoceratops, and the tail is too long, which is pretty common for ceratopsian designs in this franchise. The baby also looks pretty good. It looks like, what you'd expect a baby Nasutoceratops to look like in this franchise, with the reduced proportions, like the smaller brow horns and the smaller nose and the smaller frill and whatnot. They look pretty good, and the practical effect is also very cool. After that is the little Morris intrepidus. Now, this fella is too small compared to the real-life Morris intrepidus. It's a little tyrannosauroid, and it's a very cool inclusion, like one that you probably wouldn't expect, as most people don't know about little dinosaurs like this. There is a good chance that these are just young Morris intrepidus, and, it just so happens that every single Morris intrepidus we see is just a young one. But it would have been cool to see one that was a little bit larger. I mean, they weren't huge dinosaurs by any stretch of the imagination, but they were still larger than how they were portrayed in the movie. That aside, the feathering looks great. Like, I love the little kind of like crown it has on its head, and I just love how downy it looks on the rest of the body. The colors are amazing, such as with the red around its eye and the kind of black that it has on its snout, mixed in with the sort of white counter shading and the red on the tip of its tail. Very good colors. The colors are very cool, and it's just very cool to see an animal that's a little bit more obscure on the big screen. You know, you don't typically expect things like that, and I quite like when they do that. Next up is another little feathered dinosaur, you know, the Asian oviraptor, which, if we're assuming this is in North America, you know, completely wrong time and place, assuming this is 66 million years ago, which it probably is. Feathers look amazing. I know that feathers are something that's very difficult to pull off in CGI. They did such a good job with it on here, especially with those scenes in the cave where it's kind of like stereotypically going after some eggs. We now know that, you know, oviraptor does translate to egg thief, and it's very commonly believed that by most people that oviraptor spent most of its time eating eggs. That likely wasn't entirely true. It's like a huge it was a case of mistaken identity. When oviraptor was first discovered, it was thought that it was found on top of protoceratops eggs. Uh, which wasn't true, because later we found out that those were actually its own eggs, and it was actually just brooding. You know, it was you know, it had its arms stretched out and it was just kind of protecting its eggs. It was more so a caring parent, more so than an egg thief. So it was named oviraptor, which translates to egg thief, even though it wasn't really an egg thief. And so as a result, later depictions have always like portrayed it eating eggs, such as right here where it eats some eggs. We also see it in a Malta scene that's, you know, was deleted from the official film, where it gets its head bitten off by a Lystrosaurus. Quite unfortunate, but the colors look really amazing on this fella. I really like the way that the crest looks. For some reason, it has like little tiny baby arms, which is just interesting. And yeah, it's a pretty good design. It's a pretty fun design, and I just love the inclusion of the feathers. I think that they did such a good job with those. After that is a very brief appearance of Iguanodon. It's not a bad design. It doesn't look exactly like an Iguanodon. Its forelimbs are a bit too small, but its head looks pretty good. The body looks pretty decent, and actually the hands, you know, despite the fact that they're a little bit too small, they do look like proper Iguanodon hands, with the way that they kind of have these sort of hoofs on their fingers and that huge thumb spike. It does look pretty good in that department. It does have the beak as well. Um, again, it's a out of, you know, time traveling dinosaur. It's an early Cretaceous dinosaur that presumably shows up in the late Cretaceous period in North America, even though assuming this is North America instead of Europe. So very strange overall. Colors are pretty cool. It has some nice kind of striping on it. And for a dinosaur that we've known about for such a long time, it's both interesting that it took so long for it to show up in an actual Jurassic franchise film, and B, it's interesting that it only showed up for like 2 seconds. Like, it shows up very briefly in the prologue, which didn't release in the theatrical version of the film, and you can see it in the background in Biosyn Valley. That's about it, which is very interesting. I don't hate it though. I'd certainly like the Jurassic World Evolution version way more than this one, because it has a lot of them. Like, it seems like it has more of the proportions down, especially with those arms. But this one's certainly not terrible. It does have a thin neck though. Much like the hadrosaurs, iguanodonts, like iguanodontids, are often portrayed with like very thin necks in earlier depictions, when they actually did have more beefy necks, which is certainly not shown right here. Dreadnoughtus, the titan. Like, I think this is the first titanosaur to show up in the franchise. A fitting one too. Dreadnoughtus is one of the largest titanosaurs that we know of. It's up there with Argentinosaurus. It might be larger than Argentinosaurus, but of course we don't know for sure. That's always going to go back and forth. This looks pretty good too. The neck probably isn't held, uh, like, it's probably not held in the correct angle, but it still looks pretty good. You know, it does have like a lot of bulk in the neck. The head doesn't, it looks a little, to me, the head looks a little bit more like a diplodocid head instead of a titanosaur head, but titanosaur heads, much like this Argentinosaurus figure shows right here, they are a little bit more longer in the snout and all that good stuff. It doesn't really look that bad, you know, and it shows up in the, you know, despite the fact it was a South American dinosaur, it shows up in the prologue again, which is interesting, but regardless, it also does have the huge elephant feet that we've seen quite a bit with other like herbivorous dinosaur portrayals. It's pretty good, you know, it's pretty good. It's a brief little dinosaur that wow. It's a brief dinosaur that shows up, and it's pretty all right, you know. It's pretty all right. I definitely don't hate it, and I think it does capture some good things about titanosaurs. Now, the Parasaurolophus. We've had quite a few Parasaurolophus appear in the past. Most of them have remained pretty consistent with each other. Dominion is my favorite. Dominion is the first time that they actually go on with like a full-on remodel design. and it looks so good. It's too small. They've made it smaller for some reason. Like, look at it compared to Chris Pratt. That is way too small compared to how Parasaurolophus was in real life. It's got more, it's got more bulk in the neck. Overall, it has more bulk in general. The hands are a little bit more fused together and almost look like hooves, like the hoof-like structure that hadrosaurs would typically have. The tail has a lot more beef to it. And the colors look really good. The combination of the blue with the blue stripes and the more dull, like, base coloration, it looks really good. The head also looks really fantastic as well, and I love the way that the crest looks. This was a huge improvement on the Parasaurolophus design, and it appears in Rebirth. This is the sort of design that they're using for the unfortunately dead Parasaurolophus that we see in that. But this one is by far my favorite one that they've done, a Parasaurolophus. It was a very good redesign that I hope that we see more in the future as time goes on, because they killed it with this one. Blue was able to asexually reproduce and create a clone of herself, that being Beta. Of course, we did see Baby Blue and the other raptors in the previous film, and that pretty much matches this. The reduced proportions of a baby velociraptor in the franchise, and she has the same coloration as her cloned mother, or just her mother, I suppose, with the blue stripe and a base coloration of gray. Very cool. Microceratus also has a brief little appearance in this, and it looks all right. There's something about it does kind of seems a little bit off to me. I think it might be where those eyes are positioned. It seems like they might be a little bit too big, and they're also positioned a little bit too far up. Other than that, it's not a terrible design. It is a tiny ceratopsian, which is pretty represented right here with more of a reduced frill, and the colors are pretty cool. It's cool to see a dinosaur like this that was implied to be in the franchise for a while. It's cool to see them finally appear on screen. There's a young Baryonyx that appears here, and I wanted to bring this up because it actually has like a little prosthetic limb. Like, it lost one of its arms, and it's like got a prosthetic applied to it. I think that's kind of cool. And because it's younger, it actually has like smaller proportions from the adults, which means that it has a thinner snout and a thinner neck, which means that it's actually technically a little bit more accurate. And so I like it way more. It still does have the osteoderms and that basic blue coloration, but all around, I think it looks better, despite the fact that it's simply just a young one. And just that prosthetic limb just really it just makes the design awesome to me. It's such a cool concept that, it's a sad concept as well. That implies that these animals have been fighting each other for quite a bit, to the point where it's like, yeah, they got hurt, it lost its limb, let's put a prosthetic limb on it. It's pretty sad overall, but I do really like this design. I think it's a fun design, and just like looking at the design implies a lot about the actual animal's history. Lystrosaurus, which was a pretty cool addition. It's a late Permian, early Triassic Dicynodont. It's a synapsid, which means that it shares far closer relation to us than it does to dinosaurs. This fellow is not a dinosaur. Again, more closely related to mammals than they are to reptiles. So they are strange little creatures. They've got like this very kind of basic bulldog-like appearance. The one in Dominion does not look nearly as weird as the actual Lystrosaurus. Like the actual Lystrosaurus has way more of like a flat snout and more of a squared off beak. But this one does have some traits that you'd expect from Lystrosaurus, like the tusks that it has, and again, the beak. A nice little touch is that they added like small amounts of hair, even gave it like little eyebrows, which is something that likely hints at its relation to mammals. So that is something that's pretty cool. It does have like a little bit of a semi-sprawled stance, which is something that Lystrosaurus did have, and a reduced tail. So they got they got the spirit of Lystrosaurus pretty good. And it's a practical effect too. Like, we see some practical effects used with this, and they look really cool. Always really cool to see a lesser known creature like this. The eyes are probably facing a little bit more forward when they're probably a little bit more on the side on the real life animal, but still pretty cool. There is also the new raptor squad known as the Atrociraptors. I don't like them. I'm not a big fan of them. I liked them a little bit more in Chaos Theory, and that's because they were given more of like a story reason to be fleshed out a little bit more. But I don't know. So first of all, Atrociraptor is known from very fragmentary remains. Only a piece of the snout is known. And Atrociraptor is estimated to be a pretty small raptor, a pretty small dromaeosaur. They made them huge in this. They made I don't know why they do that. That's something I don't like that they do. There are big dromaeosaurs in the fossil record. We have Austroraptor, we have Achillobator, we have Utahraptor, and they have not used those. Instead, they take relatively small dromaeosaurs like a Trosiraptor and just scale them up. I don't think you have to do that. I think you could just use some larger dromaeosaurs. Of course, and these fellows do lack feathers, which that is very similar to the Jurassic Park velociraptors we've been seeing quite a bit of. So I guess it keeps them consistent in that, and they do have like most of them have pretty like the same coloration from each other, except for Ghost. The Ghost is probably the most different from the rest of them. I just don't like the way that they look. And what's also interesting is that they hold their hands like in a way that would suggest that they have feathers on their hands, but they don't have feathers. So it just kind of looks weird the way that they hold their hands. That was an interesting detail that I noticed when I first saw the film, and I just really don't understand that. But they're interesting. They're interesting designs. They're fine. I just don't like them. Now, in this movie, we do have my favorite Carnotaurus design, that being Demon. Demon, he looks so good here. Now, everything I said about the Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom Carnotaurus applies to this one as well. Has all of those classic Abelisaur traits that you would come to expect. The arms are the proper size, even though they do have elbows when Carnotaurus did not have elbows. It does have the brow horns. One of them is broken on Demon, which I love. Again, it implies that they've been fighting for quite a bit, or maybe it got that before. Who knows? There's a story that we don't know about, and I love that. It does have the rough skin, although it's not distributed properly. But the coloration is what stands out the most for me. That's what I love about Demon. That mixed in with the broken horn just looks so cool. The red coloration, which is kind of like a reference to one of the original Jurassic Park toys that has like a red coloration, a red and black coloration, just looks so cool. I just love it. You know, I just I've gushed about it quite a bit, and I love it. We also see the new Allosaurus design right here, which is technically a grown Allosaurus. Still has the lacrimal crests, still has that sort of Allosaurus head shape that you'd come to expect. The whole huge Allosaurus body, longer arms with 3 claws on each hand, and they're facing the proper way too, which is really cool. And they're covered in osteoderms. I've said it a lot before. I just don't like throwing osteoderms on every single dinosaur. I don't think it's something that you need to do. Now, there is also one thing I want to mention. So there's this one scene where, of course, the Allosaurus eats the guy on the scooter. If I were to ever like win a competition or something like that to get a little like a little appearance in a Jurassic franchise movie, that's this type of appearance I would want to have. Show up for like a few seconds, get eaten by a dinosaur. That would be perfect. That would just be awesome. Just imagine that. It's like, yeah, I was in a Jurassic franchise movie. I got eaten. No biggie. That's what I'd like to, if I managed to like win a competition or something, and I got like Universal said, yeah, okay, you can have a quick little cameo or whatever, and you get to be one of the background characters that gets eaten. I'd be so happy. That'd be so fun. There are locusts, giant locusts in this movie. I don't like them. I don't know. It was an interesting route to take for the movie. They tried to take the apocalyptic route when they probably didn't need to do that. I don't know if we needed to go that route per se. They are fictional. There's really nothing in the fossil record that's quite like this. I don't know. They're fine. Like they're just basically giant grasshoppers at the end of the day. The swarm was kind of cool, but I don't know. The Quetzalcoatlus, the criminally underused pterosaur of Dominion. So it looks great. It looks really good. It's oversized. Of course, it's oversized as heck, but the whole body plan looks pretty good. It's got like that huge long beak. It's got a crest on its head, which looks really cool. It's got the pycnal fibers, aka the feathers that are on its head going down to its throat all the way onto the body, and the wings look really good. This is like a really good like Jurassic version of Quetzalcoatlus that I was hoping to see more of, but of course it did get a little bit of a redesign in the new movie, and I know that there's like a story reason for that, but that doesn't mean I have to like the new design. I really liked the Rebirth design. I thought it was perfect. The colors, the way that it looks, everything but the size is near perfect to Quetzalcoatlus. Pyroraptor, a lot of feathers in this movie, which is really cool. You gotta love seeing feathers. Pyroraptor is the first feathered dromaeosaur that we have in the franchise. It's also a relatively small dromaeosaur that we know of. Also, Pyroraptor is a little bit frustrating to me. It was discovered in France, right, from fragmentary remains. The problem is that there's already a dromaeosaur that was discovered in France known as Veriraptor. That's also known from fragmentary remains. Now, here's where the problem comes in. A lot of times when you find like two different animals that live in the same general area and at the same general time, You would want to have enough fossils to compare with each other to determine if they are actually separate from each other. Varyraptor and Pyroraptor, there's not enough fossils to compare. Like, we haven't found the same type of fossils for Pyroraptor as we did for Varyraptor, so we can't compare to see if they're different enough. So I would not be surprised if one day in the future we determine that Pyroraptor is actually synonymous with Varyraptor. And then they used it in this movie. The feathers actually look really cool. I like the red coloration, and the way that they look on the arm looks pretty good, even though the coverage is not quite correct. Like, the hands are a little bit too exposed. The hands would have been mostly covered by the feathers. It has like padded feet to help explain why it was so good at swimming. Why they made it so good at swimming in the first place, I don't know. It didn't really add too much. It's like, you probably could have got them by running straight at them, but instead you decided to go into the water for some reason. I don't know. But I appreciate the inclusion of feathers. It's just the coverage is not quite correct, especially going up to the head. But I like the little crown that it has on top of its head. Not a terrible design, and I do like it way more after the newest season of Chaos Theory. It's just there's a lot of frustrations that come with this creature, especially considering that one, we don't know how valid Pyroraptor will be in the future, and two, we don't the specimen suggests that it was a relatively small dromaeosaur and not nearly as big as they have it here. Again, just use bigger dromaeosaurs. Just use that. Austroraptor exists, just like Lakota brought that up. And while Austroraptor was probably not semi-aquatic, Austroraptor did eat fish, so it makes a little bit more sense. It would have been cool to see. Therizinosaurus, another feathered dinosaur. They gave it sparse feathers too, which actually might be likely considering the fact that it is a larger animal that lived in a relatively warm environment. Sparse feathers might make sense. It does have the huge claws that Therizinosaurus did have, and the head is like huge and blocky. Now, we don't actually have the skull of Therizinosaurus, but we do have the skull of some of its relatives, and it didn't really look like this. The beak is not nearly as parrot-like. It wasn't as sharp. It was a little bit more flat. But that aside, the colors look amazing on this, and I just love seeing more feathers. Seeing more feathers is always really cool. And a lot of times its posture is held a little bit more horizontally when it probably should be held a little bit more vertically, but still pretty cool. I love seeing it. It is a blind dinosaur. It uses echolocation to move around, which is pretty fun. And it certainly does have one of the best scenes in the whole movie. Dimetrodon, another not dinosaur, another synapsid, shares far closer relation to us than it does to dinosaurs. So I really liked their scene here too. I thought that they were utilized quite well. I loved the darkness and the light shining through the sail. Looked really cool overall. The design is not bad. You can certainly tell it's a Dimetrodon. It's got that sail on its back. It's kind of like got a semi-sprawled stance, I suppose, although it might be a little bit too sprawled for it. The head is a lot more like a T-Rex head, which is quite a bit different from the real life animal, and it kind of looks like it has osteoderms, either that or just like large bumpy skin, I suppose. I know that there's been a lot of research on the type of skin texturing that Dimetrodon might have had, and honestly, the bumpy skin might be kind of likely. I have seen a lot of art that portrays it like that. But you can certainly tell it's meant to be Dimetrodon, and I think they do a pretty good job in that department. Just the head is like one of the biggest drawbacks for it. It just really does look like a mini T-Rex head. And finally, the Giganotosaurus. This is probably the best example of how far they can go with just trying to make these guys look like monsters. It looks like a mini Godzilla mixed in with like an Acrocanthosaurus. The skull shape is quite a bit different from the actual Giganotosaurus' skull. It's way more thin at the tip of the snout. It's got like this really interesting sort of crocodilian-esque back that leads up into a little bit of like a small hump-like structure, like an arch on his back, which is kind of similar to Concavinator, which is a small Carcharodontosaurid. Again, I don't like putting osteoderms on everything, and the osteoderms that are present on the Giganotosaurus here certainly do make it look like a mini Godzilla. That's like the best way that I could put it. It also has like really jagged teeth, very jagged crocodilian-like teeth that I don't know. There's so many things that are just very crocodilian about this Giganotosaurus, and it's not even like you can't even say that it's been filled in with crocodilian DNA, because this is exactly how it looks like in the prologue. In the prologue, you have a real Giganotosaurus in universe. So there, I can already predict the comments that will be coming. The practical effect is very cool. I love the fact that they use that. It's very cool that they managed to use it, even though a lot about that scene was very awkward in the way that everything was kind of moving around. The colors aren't bad. I have certainly seen some better colors applied to it in Jurassic World Evolution 2, but they're not terrible here. Just that paired with the whole design, I just one of my least favorite designs in the whole franchise. It's really like up there with Baryonyx. I don't like it very much. Just don't like it. But there we have it. Those are the creatures of Jurassic World Dominion. Not all of them. I know it's not all of them, but that is like, it was still a long video. Like we're at 29 minutes right now. Of course, it's going to get cut down, so it won't be that long. The finished product won't be that long. But this was a longer one because they did add a lot of creatures to this, and they did do like quite a few redesigns. So there was a lot to say overall. Definitely not my favorite film in the franchise. It actually might be my least favorite. Had a lot of interesting ideas, but a lot of like really poor executions. A lot of things happened way too quickly. You didn't get a chance to even spend enough time with each of these really cool creatures that they introduced. So all around, of course, you know, what can I say about this film that hasn't been said millions of times before, even by myself? So be sure to let me know what you guys think. What's your favorite creature in this film? Yeah, so that was the last of the Jurassic franchise movies. I'll probably do the shows in the future. I know everybody wants me to do that, and I completely agree. There's some awesome designs to take a look at in the you know, Chaos Theory and Camp Cretaceous. So keep an eye out for that in the future. It just won't be for Jurassic June. This was the last for Jurassic June. And then we'll probably do other projects too, like the creatures of, you know, Valley of Gwangi and whatnot. It'll be really fun. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you so much to my patrons and my channel members. You guys are all truly awesome, and I really appreciate you. If you want to help support me, the link for that is down below. And yeah, until next time, thank you guys so much for watching, and have an awesome day.